and really analyze it to so without further ado, everyone will stand up and do second action pledge. I pledge allegiance to my African people. I pledge to cut my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people in my struggle for liberation through revolution. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances, which weaken me and make me less capable of defending myself, my family, and my anti-global system. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with others, or else we bring about change more quickly. I will defend myself thoughtfully, effectively, rather than wasting time in idle hatred. I will train myself to hurt or allow others to harm my African system. I recognize that we need every African man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles are pledged to practice daily, institution providers, in order to unite our people and struggle for freedom and so we're going to start out with two clips. Our first clip we're going to show is going to be the boy after 60, and then after that, our next clip is going to be the last year where there was protests going on, or actually there was uprising in Chicago.
May of 1963, protest against segregation in Alabama brought the issue of racial conflict to a head.
The legal remedies are not passed. We left the start in the street, in demonstration, parade, and protest, to create tension violence. That's lies. You make that prayer in a moral place. You cannot do that. You cannot be left. You cannot be patient in the street. It cannot be quiet like what it moves or fall. Even time to act. The Congress, the state, and the legislative body, above all about being lives. It is not enough to put the blame on others. Facing the problem of one section of the country or another. Or for the fact that we face, it may change the hand. And our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Whether we do nothing, or invite change, or violence. Whether we act boldly, or recognize the right, as well as the other. This is one way. But because that country, because all of the people who came here, and even chance to come in the power. You cannot let the population. You can't have that right. We can't have a chance to go for the water. The only way to get them to get their right is on the street. I want to go there, and we know ourselves. That's how we do that.
It's about staying neutral. That's what's important. That's what's important. Talk about that.
So, I know that might be hard to watch, especially the second one. But I think that it was just important to show like those two, that video, because it gives an image for like what Black Lives Matter is, what those organizations under like, the Black Lives Matter coalition are about. And they, you know, it can be really misleading because, well, you can see that like a lot of the working class Africans out there, they were not in support of anything that man was doing. He was literally going and hugging the pigs. Like he was hugging the same people who are in our communities each and every day, murdering us, and literally the same pigs that are there right at that moment to attack you. And he's going up and hugging these officers. And then they had some kind of Africans who looked like they were like, I guess, working class Africans trying to come and say that, you know, they too were, you know, on that same message and wanted peace and to look at these officers as humans, but that's pushing the wrong message out to Africans, especially in our communities. And it can just be really easy to, I guess, align yourselves with movements like Black Lives Matter and things like that, just because they have a lot of money and they are on every single thing you look at. If you look at any hashtag or anything that has to do with an African dying, you see Black Lives Matter painted over the whole entire.
Real quick, sum up.
The whole entire picture.
We should know that didn't work before.
And it, you know, it just, I think it's just really important to see that.
So we have to test all this stuff.
Talking about like self-determination, you're not talking about like control.
That's all I want to say. We just should know that because that's embarrassing. The chairman.
I guess learn to.
Yes, it's not, but we run it. And
Yeah, I know.
we have to, and we should be testing everything.
I know.
I'm just saying, just for the future. I'm not criticizing right now. I'm just trying to let us know. All right.
First of all, I want to make a start of self-criticism for not being fully prepared for this discussion. But I think it's really important. And as you know, in just a couple of weeks, we'll be having a March dinner here in St. Petersburg, where Africans from throughout the United States and from various parts of the world will be coming. And the plenary is an opportunity. It's the closest thing that we have to the party of Congress, where we'll sum up our work in the last year, where it is the launch.
I got you.
In the context of the existing situation inside this country. But we felt it necessary to theme this plenary, putting revolution back on the agenda. But it was really important to do that because coming at you was talking about.
Thanks for driving the new Buick. So where are we going?
Out here in this country at this time, in particular, but other places as well. And the real issue is
What days are sponsored?
being put forth the wrong thing.
What day was that? Wednesday?
The real
Thursday?
issue is that they don't talk about
Oh, yeah,
revolution at all,
Thursday.
and revolution is not on the agenda. And that's
Why
something
you ask?
that's really important.
No, I'm just trying to get a grapple on
Because those of them who know anything about revolution don't want it to happen.
We gotta get out there, start something that spirit. Chairman is criticizing us about that. That's just, he said this man with a mental illness, he's handicapped, he's out there. The chairman is criticizing us for not selling the spirit. And he always used this, man, we gotta get out there and sell the spirit.
Revolution doesn't get on the agenda. Which is why
Well, what page is this coming from? InPDUM?
we spend all this money to support
I'm saying,
organizations and personalities that's supposed to be about making demonstrations and
Who's going supposed to be coming?
she's not.
Is he
doing
not?
other kinds of things like that. Because revolution is not on the agenda. They don't speak about
She don't wanna
revolution, they
come.
don't
She
intend
ain't-
to make revolution at all.
She's taking the
The
wrong
big problem
stance,
I have is that revolution is not even on the agenda. It's not
trying to
just
abandon,
not on
you
the
know,
agenda.
she went against democratic centralism and everything, so, you know, I'm gonna have to write her up and do all types of stuff, but she ain't coming.
She's still scared to come to the plenary, right? Or
I don't know, I mean, she's gonna come, but we ain't,
Castro spoke when we did.
Yeah, she coming, but we ain't got nothing to do with getting that one now.
Fidel Castro. During this presentation, Fidel Castro, who has had an incredible impact on history in this century, and the century, really important force. And one of the things that made Fidel really important was not what many people like to allude to about how we got situations of free education and free healthcare and all of this. This is really important. But they don't talk about how it happened. Fidel Castro is extraordinarily significant because he had a revolutionary movement. He had a movement that was designed to take power, to overturn a social system, to take power. It was a concept of not to take power that they were able to get some control of the economy. They were taking certainly directly out of the hands of U.S. imperialism and European forces, and began to but I found it disappointing when we did that documentary of Fidel Castro, and he was explaining how it won't be this time Bolshevism and the way they took power won't be necessary anymore. That's what he said. And that somehow through persuasion and people having discussions, that's what it was going to take to change things. So the revolution is not on the agenda. Nobody's talking about revolution. And a problem is that it's almost like forces have conceded. You didn't hear even Hugo Chavez. As much as people love Hugo Chavez, he's creating a so-called socialist party, he said. He's creating a situation, he said, where he can provide free education, all these other things, but he wasn't talking about revolution. You didn't hear any discussion from Hugo Chavez about revolution. And it's almost like most people in the world, particularly people in colonized countries, have come to the conclusion that revolution is not going to happen. They're not going to overturn the social system. So the thing is to try to make it work for you, the system, to make it work for you as well as you can. And so that's the predicament we find ourselves in at this point. So what are the standards when you come to a situation where you got young people who are willing to block the interstates and who say stuff like Black Lives Matter? This is where we have this big conflict with them, is because it is something that makes the assumption that African people, Black people, the oppressed people of the world, can somehow become free within the context of the existing social system, and that is impossible to happen. So I want to just say a few things about that. The first thing I want to say is that it's not a new discussion. It was a discussion that really, as early, as long ago as the early part of the 20th century, it was a discussion that really roiled the European socialist movement. How do you become free? And this was the thing that propelled via Lenin and the Russian Social Labor Democratic Party that came to be known as the Bolsheviks, the Communist Party. It was a thing that propelled them to power. They were engaged in this huge debate about what it takes to win, what it takes to free the people. And Lenin was significant because he organized to make a revolution. He also understood that revolution is different from just having a concerned with the idea of destroying the power of the oppressor and then taking power and wielding power after you take it. That's what revolution is. Revolution, someone should go back to the 60s, I think it was Message to the Grassroots that Malcolm X, I think that was the presentation when he talked about the difference between the Negro Revolution and the Black Revolution. And he was criticizing the activities of the Civil Rights Movement that one might find similar to what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement. Of course, they were not really similar because the Black Lives Matter movement is empty. At least the Civil Rights Movement had some goals, some aims that it was fighting for, that it was able to win African people to. But the Black Lives Movement, it just says Black Lives Matter. That's it. And it didn't mobilize, and it didn't even have organization, the Black Lives Movement, to carry out some mission associated with this thing, Black Lives Matter. Civil Rights Movement did that. But even as the Civil Rights Movement did that, they did not do it in a fashion that made the assumption that it was going to take a revolution. And it was going to take overturning the social system that we exist in and being able to capture power and wield political power. Malcolm talked about the difference in a Negro revolution, because after a period of time, revolution is something that they began to discuss. They began to discuss it because of what did happen in Cuba. Cuba influenced them. What was happening in Vietnam? The Vietnamese were making revolution. What was happening in Algeria, Northern Africa? People were engaged in revolutionary struggle. And increasingly, this was influencing the struggles of African people in this country. So it was difficult for Africans in this country to continue talking about being free when it had nothing to do with the capture of political power and exercising political power. And it was difficult for Africans to continue talking about freedom in this country like it was just something that happened to us inside the United States, and that there was something not going on in the greater world, and oppressed people all around the world was fighting for liberation. And that's why Malcolm, he said, and he used these examples, and he said that the Cuban Revolution, that's the revolution. He said they overturned the system. He said revolution is something that overturns systems. And he said, and the only way you can do it is what? Bloodshed. And he talked about the Chinese Revolution. And he mentioned how in China, when he was in prison, he saw this article about this Chinese girl who had an uncle who was a sellout, who was somebody who worked for the oppressor. And that this uncle, this child killed her own uncle because he was on the wrong side and standing in the way of the people's freedom. He said the Vietnamese Revolution, he talked about a handful of Vietnamese in pajamas and what have you, with a bowl of rice. That's all it took was a bowl of rice and a blade. And when night fell, he said it was even Steven in terms of the contest that the Vietnamese made against the United States government. None of these instances where people running around talking about Cuban lives matter or Vietnamese lives matter or something to this effect. They understood that if you're going to change the situation, then you got to have the power to do it. And to get the power to do it means that you got to go against the power that prevents you from doing anything. That power has to be destroyed. That's what revolution is about. And that's what it is that I think is really important for us to understand. And now we have a situation where African people have been killed in this country with impunity over and over and over again. Everybody sees this. The whole African population demoralized. Every time you look up, somebody being killed over Skittles, sleeping in the bed, in the playground, getting ready for their wedding, shot down in New York, anything, selling a cigarette, a traffic incident, black people just being killed. And all of us watching this stuff happening, and the whole black population in this country and around the world being demoralized by this. What you gonna do? And then, of course, what happened was on August 9, 2014, young working class black people, not preachers, not lawyers, but young working class black people stood up. And when the police murdered Mike Brown, 18 years old, you know how it works. African walking down the street, and the police just be messing with you. All you gotta do is be an African, and every African, and especially every African young man, knows what I'm talking about. All you gotta do is just be walking in your community or moving in your community. You're gonna have some kind of encounter with the police. They're there all the time doing that, and they're harassing Africans and locking people up and humiliating people, making people ending up with their hands cuffed, sitting on the curb with their pants down and stuff like this. The police do this on a regular basis. And so you got a situation where the entire African population is demoralized by this relationship, humiliated on a regular basis. And then, and you got people like Al Sharpton, who's supposed to be a civil rights guy, who will come and mobilize thousands of people who are angry, who are upset and wanting to change this, mobilize thousands of people, and then take them someplace and then have a prayer session. And nothing ever changes. Or you have some fake situation like a Farrakhan, who will call for a million man's march. And everybody said, yeah, 1 million black people marching. And then call it an atonement march. So you got 1 million people who are upset about what's happening to us, and these are men. You know, women were upset too, but this is 1 million men's march. And then what is the march for? He says for atonement, like something wrong with you. I just remember my mother, who was in her 80s, and she said to me, like, if you want to atone, you can go to church and do that on your own. You don't have to go to Washington, D.C., where all the oppression is coming from. If anybody needs to atone, they need to be atoning in Washington, D.C. So we take African people to Washington, D.C., and people went because the whole idea of being united as black people and perhaps taking some kind of stance was really important to us, because there is some memory of something like black power, something like the resistance that existed in the 1960s. And so people went to Washington, D.C., and the big lessons we got out of it is we shouldn't call women bitches, right? So, wow, that's deep, right? And other simple stuff like this, but nothing that challenged the social system. Again, it presupposes that you are the problem. You are the problem. Our community is the problem, not the social system that's responsible for putting us in this situation. That's no revolution. That's not even on the agenda. Revolution not even on the agenda. And then Farrakhan calls last October, I think it was, for a mobilization that was called Justice or Else. This time, more than 1 million African people went to Washington, D.C. Justice or else. And even the theme is something that made it suggest the possibility of the system providing some kind of justice, some kind of whatever justice would be characterized as. And that's a real interesting kind of question. What is justice? You know, and then or else. What the hell is or else? But it fed into the fact that Africans were upset and are upset, killing us in Baltimore, killing us in North Carolina, killing us in New York, killing us in Cleveland, Ohio, killing us in Chicago, killing us all around the damn country on a regular basis, and people want to do something about it. And these forces like this, they exhaust the people. In fact, they'll make the people stop wanting to even come out for a demonstration, some mobilization, because nothing ever happens. There is nothing that is for. What is it for in terms of advancing the struggle? How are we one step closer to some kind of freedom now than we were before? And of course the answer is no. And that's not an accident. And you have the Al Sharptons, you have the Farrakhan's, and then they are fed by strong media, the bourgeois media, the ruling class media, and sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie that will do everything they can to make sure that this is the message that gets out before the people. And so revolution is not even on the agenda, but it used to be on the agenda. In the 1960s was an era that was characterized as one where revolution was the main trend in the entire world. And that makes sense, because all the people on the planet Earth were being dominated by white people, white power, in a very nasty, filthy way. And even though there were those who wanted to help us to believe that the problem of African people in this country was separate and distinctly different from the problem of African people any place else, or the problems of African people in this country were different from the problem of the Vietnamese people in Vietnam or the people in Cuba, etc. The truth is, revolution was happening everywhere, because you had direct white power dominating most of the world, and people wanted to be free. And as I mentioned, the heroic people in Vietnam, the heroic people coming out of Cuba, the Cuban Revolution, tiny island like Cuba, became symbolic of what the possibilities were. And in this country, there was an incredible revolution as well. And I participated in it. And so did people like Huey P. Newton. And for a moment, so did people like Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown. For a moment, they were there as well. And Malcolm X. And it was a revolutionary movement. And this was the movement that also set the terms, the context for the existence and practice of Martin Luther King, who preached philosophical nonviolence. Martin Luther King was not dangerous because he preached philosophical nonviolence. Martin Luther King was dangerous because he had the ability to mobilize millions of African people at a time where the struggle of black people was more and more taking on the character of revolution. Where all around him, people were talking about revolution. So no matter what Martin Luther King was mobilizing millions of people around, the revolution was something that was close to being on the top of the agenda. This was the threat. And so the United States government murdered Malcolm X, murdered Martin Luther King. And, you know, some people may find that hard to believe, but they even killed, Kennedy. They killed 2 Kennedys. Assassination became the primary method of struggle that was happening in this country. And so the revolutionary movement was crushed. It was beaten down. It was moved. And then in addition to just the violence that they imposed on our community, a whole array of slander was used against the Black Revolution. Slander, the worst kind of slander, was used against the revolution. So revolution then was put forth as something that would be carried out by people who were barely sane, frothing at the mouth, irrational human beings. When the truth of the matter is, revolution is good. It's cleansing. It overturns. Even white people used to pretend to believe in revolution. Even people like Thomas Jefferson, the baby rapist, slave-owning baby rapists used to talk about how the tree of liberty had to be what? Had to be nourished or watered by the blood of tyrants every so often, etc. So revolution was something that most people around the world at a particular time recognized as positive and good until we started doing it. Revolution was good until the Cubans did it and to get rid of U.S. control of Cuba. Revolution was good until the Algerians in North Africa did it to get rid of the control of white power from France. Revolution was good until Africans in this country began to talk about it in terms of changing our relationship to a social system. And so when the revolution was crushed, then the rulers of this country made sure, from their perspective, it would never rear its head again. And they engaged our movement in something that's called counterinsurgency. And counterinsurgency is a scientific process that's used by oppressors to make sure that an oppressed people cannot win freedom. They call an insurgency is an effort, is a collective concerted effort by oppressed people to win your freedom. They call that an insurgency. So they built a whole school that's referred to as counterinsurgency. Isn't that something? Something to keep that from happening or to crush it should it ever rear its head again. Counterinsurgency. This is a white people's thing, to make sure that the oppressed people do not realize their freedom. And they became experts at this. And part of what they did, of course, in this country was they initiated a whole regimen of assassinations. You know, we know about Martin Luther King. We know about Malcolm X. There was Fred Hampton. There were people, there was murder that was happening throughout cities throughout this country, and then mass arrests. They would use the draft board. At that time, there was a draft board. 18 years old, if you were a man, you had to sign up for the draft. And they picked people in your communities who knew all of the young black people from one, like the high school principal, and the guy who had been high school principal, had been elementary principal in this city, was put on the draft board. And then one of the policies that they adopted was to make sure that young Africans would not be available to make revolution in this country because they'd be off in Vietnam killing and dying for America. This was a part of the counterinsurgency that they used against us. Another thing that they used against us at this time was heroin. Here you have the United States government who's making a war against the people in Vietnam. And what they did was, and Vietnam was the place where Vietnam in this area they call the Golden Triangle in Vietnam, Burma. It's called something else now. In this area where most of the world's opium was coming from. Opium is what was used to make heroin. And so if they were, the US government through the CIA and forces like that were bringing heroin, so they're killing the Vietnamese and they sent us to help kill the people in Vietnam, and then they're importing heroin coming from Vietnam into this country, and then the next thing you know, in every corner in the black community around this country, Africa's nodding off because they're on heroin. Why would black people do heroin? Black people would do heroin because it's a form of pain relief. That's what you will find. In every oppressed community in this country and around the world, the rulers make sure that there's a liquor store on every corner, that drugs are available because this is the thing that will help the people to not resist because you're drunk, you're on drugs and stuff like that. And also because it creates a permanent state of demoralization. And so that's part of what they did. And then, of course, by 1979, when the people in Nicaragua took power in South America, and we saw that the United States strategy moved from heroin to not even cocaine, but a derivative of cocaine that they call crack, that somebody went into a laboratory and created just for you. It's a derivative of cocaine, highly addictive, and they created it just for us. And this is a part of the counterinsurgency that I'm talking about. And so the whole notion of revolution was taken off the agenda. The people become incredibly demoralized. I don't know how many Africans were jailed, imprisoned as a consequence of this and continue to be jailed because of designer laws that they make to make sure that we stay in jail. And because we have so much respect for the bourgeois state, for the ruling class state, that we actually believe it when they sentence us to this time in our community. You do the crime, you do the time. And it's like the slave master decides what the crime is and then has the power to make sure that Africans stay enslaved. So revolution has been off the agenda. And now what we find is a very critical moment in history, similar to what we saw in the 1960s, where peoples all around the world are trying to take back their resources from white power. People in Afghanistan want their own resources. They want to be able to do what they want to do. People in places like Iraq, they want the oil to do what they want to do with their own oil. They don't believe that the oil that comes from under the ground in this area that they call the Middle East should end up in a tank in St. Petersburg being pumped up in gas stations. They think it's theirs, and it is theirs. And so this is what's happening around the world. And so the potential for revolution is great, and the oppressors do everything they can to make sure that revolution does not occur. So here we have a situation that's ripe for revolution. Oppressed peoples everywhere want to be free. African people in this country want to be free. But what the hell do? Block a highway. Hands up, don't shoot. That's where we are. And what we are saying is that we have to reintroduce the question of revolution back onto the agenda. And the only way that we are going to be free is that we have the power of our lives in our own hands. And to do that, you gotta go up against the system that has taken all your power from you and got it for themselves. You ain't got no power. You ain't got no power to guarantee your child gonna have the ability to live. You ain't got no power, no control over your life, none whatsoever. And this is the fundamental problem that we're confronted with. Armed thugs from other communities, come here and chase us like animals, chase our young people throughout the streets like animals and what have you. No power at all. And that's what we have to do. We got to break their power and then have our own power. That's what revolution is. Now, here's what you and I are confronted with. First of all, we are colonized. That means we are a nation of people that's oppressed by another nation of people. Another nation of people step on us, use us for their own ends. When we were snatched up and brought here and enslaved and what have you, white people control us. That's a nation of people. And we work with this nation of people that have a parasitic relationship with us. That's one aspect of it. So you got this. And all oppressed people want to be free. All people who are oppressed as nations want to get rid of the slave master and become a free people. So that's one aspect of the struggle that we're involved in. And what we've seen in different places around the world, struggles for national liberation, the nations rise up. And they have occasionally overthrown the oppressor nation. And there were movements and organizations inside this country that were built to deal with the national oppression of black people, to deal with us as oppressed as black people, to get rid of white power in our lives. And we saw a lot of that. Part of what Leo was talking about in some of the studies we were looking at, there were different groups, the Republic of New Africa, the New African People's Organization. There were a lot of organizations, there were several organizations around that said, we got to get rid of the white man, get white power out of our lives. That's one aspect of it. And if you succeed in doing that, that's a revolution of sorts. We call that a bourgeois national revolution, because that's what it does. It overthrows white power from the whole nation. But getting rid of white power, control of the nation, is not the same thing as liberating the African working people who are responsible for creating all the wealth. Just to replace white power with black power that carries out the same mission of white power is not free. That's not the revolution we are looking for. We recognize that what is happening in the world is that through white power, capturing people around the world, they built a whole new social system that's called capitalism. And capitalism is based on a parasitic relationship. It gets born from slavery and colonialism and a parasitic relationship that white power and white people have with us. But it also has different kind of characteristics. And one of the characteristics of capitalism is exploitation, is the fact that people who work in the capitalist system don't get paid for what they produce, that they get paid for their ability to produce. In other words, if you work in a factory and whatever, you produce cars, you produce tables and what have you, and that car and that table gets sold, you don't get paid the value of what you just did. You don't get paid for that. You get paid enough so that you can come back to work the next day. You can pay your rent, maybe, right? Have a six-pack or something like that. You don't get paid for what you did. That's capitalism. The ones who get paid for what you did, the ones that get paid for what you did are the capitalists. They don't work at all. You get your butt up early in the morning and sometimes you catch one of them buses because ain't no real public transportation to take you to some fast food joint where you're going to work at. And then they don't pay you again for what you did, because if you got paid for what you did, think about the number of hamburgers you sold when you were there at McDonald's. How many Big Macs, all the green stuff that they call Big Macs that you sold? You don't get paid for that. You get paid enough so that when you get off, maybe you got enough money to buy some groceries, and with the help of Section 8, have a place to stay, etc. That's the capitalist system. That's capitalism. So what we have to do, we're involved in a revolution to overturn national oppression, the oppression that we have as a colonized people under the total domination of white power. It's got to go. But in its place, we have to have a different kind of social system. And this is what people have referred to as socialism or communism or what have you. Where the people who produce the wealth are the ones who collectively own the wealth. And that you don't have a situation where somebody don't do no work at all, privately own every damn thing that you produce. How many white people were out there in the cotton plantations when the cotton was being picked? How many white people were out there They got the money, they got the resources, they got the big houses, but the one who picked it ain't got nothing but scars on their backs and things like that, and a shortened lifespan. So we're saying that the producers, the real producers of value, who collectively, socially produce all the value, should be the ones who socially own the value. That's the kind of system that we're talking about. And they tell you, well, you know, you're talking about free healthcare, like somehow you welfare. No, white power and the capitalist class, they're the ones who get living off welfare. When you heard them, Trump ain't got no job, and Hillary ain't got no job. These are not people who work to produce anything. The ones who worked and produced it have nothing. But all of them have health care. All of them have education, and their children have education. And where did they get it from? You paid for it. So what we are saying is we want a social system. We overturn this rotten mess that sits on us, and then we take the resources that we produce, and then we set up free clinics. We set up free health care. We set up free education. We set up free housing. And it ain't really free. We paid for it with our labor. All the labor that goes into the society is what creates all the value in the society. That's what we're talking about when we talk about revolution as African internationalists. And so sometimes people who say they're in the same camp that you're in, they can say that because there's not a general understanding of the concept of revolution. And that's what it is that we have to put back on the agenda. I want to say that. The other thing I want to say is this, is that revolution is not something that happens easily. If you assume the responsibility of overturning a social system that's oppressive, that's killing you, that's denying your children and yourself a future, and the people around the world, if you assume that responsibility, then you have to assume the responsibility of preparing yourself to make it happen. How are you going to have a revolution? If you're going to have a revolution, then you have to have some vehicle for making a revolution. We say the vehicle for making a revolution is the party. The party is the most efficient, most effective political instrument that you can use to take power and to wield power. This is not just an act of going out and demonstrating or protesting. It's about doing what it takes to undermine the particular social system, to make it easier for the masses of people under the leadership of the party to take power. And then once having done that, to wield political power. And that says something about the discipline that you have, because white power and white people teach you not to be disciplined. It does. Teaches us not to be responsible for ourselves. Welfare mentality, colonial mentality. White man would do it for us. You don't have to learn how to do it. And it teaches us that you can't do it any damn way. It teaches us not to have confidence in our own ability. Here you are living in the worst conditions in the world. And the ones who are supposed to be the leaders facilitate that, make that happen. And you say, you can't be the leader because you ain't smart enough. But look at what all the smart people are doing for us. Look at the fact that under the leadership of the smart people, your children don't have a future. You don't have a future, etc. So the thing is that we have to prepare ourselves to be able to take power and to wield political power. And so many of the discussions that we have, that sometimes people don't take it seriously, or they think that it's just nitpicking or fighting over semantics, is quite the opposite. We have to prepare ourselves as an organization to take power, to be prepared to make the sacrifices that go along with that. Because if it was easy to be free, we've been free by now. And the party and the members of the party have to be the examples for the masses of African people. They can't shut you up. They can't quiet you down. They can't show up with the little bubble ball machine on top of the car, flashing lights, and frighten you out of existence. They can't scare you away with the threat of jail or even of death. Somebody has to set the example, to be the vanguard, the advanced detachment, so that other Africans can have the courage also to take the stance that's necessary to be free. I just want to mention something that we saw in this clip, one of the clips, where people rush out and, you know, free hugs and hugging the police and did you see this man shoot anybody, this man hurt anybody, etc. And that muddies up the water. And this is the kind of stuff that you and I are confronted with every day. Because what we hear every day is the problem is that people have to learn how to love each other. Now we got a problem because white people don't love us, or white people don't like us, and we don't like white people. So if people get together and love each other, we wouldn't have any problems like this, right? That's the basic line that you hear all the time. That somehow people just have to learn to love each other, people learn to get along. And what's really wonderful today is you see the young blacks and the young whites, you know, they don't have the same kind of attitudes as the old whites and the old blacks, and so everybody love each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And which misses the boat completely. Because you can point your finger at the police, and policeman might be your daddy or your mama, or it might be the mama or daddy of one of your best friends, and what happened. You can say something about that cop. Police might be somebody who actually leads the coach of football, local football team for children, etc. You can point your finger at that police and you can say, yeah, that's the enemy of our people. Because it ain't nothing to do with that individual. It's to do with the police as an organization. What is the police? The police is an organ of the state power. And a state is something that has come into existence between when you have a social system where a group of people live at the expense of other people. If you got a society where somebody's living off other people, you go to work, you do everything that you can to try to live, and then you don't get nothing, but somebody's taking everything that should be coming to you and they got it over in their community across some other place. What's going to keep you from going to take it back? What's going to keep you from taking it back? What's going to keep you in that school system when that little white teacher insults your child or you or does something horrible? What's going to keep you from going to that campus and breaking your kneecap, putting so much foot up her butt or his butt? It's the police. It's the state. It's that organization that says that I don't care how hungry you are, I don't care how much food is in that supermarket, you cannot go in there and get some food just because you're hungry. You go in there and try to get some food. Ask some of these sisters who have to try to live off food stamps and whatever else the hell the system provides for, all that food that's there, that in many instances they're going to throw away at the end of the week rather than let people have it. What is it that stands between hungry people and those shelves filled with food? What is it that stands between homeless people and those empty houses all over the place? It's the police, it's the state, it's the organization of force and coercion that will punish you if you go and do that. That's the police. It's not whether the guy is nice and treats his mother well, or whether they come and coach your football team. The fact is they represent a particular organization with a particular role in society, and that role in society all the time. Whether that particular cop shot somebody or not, the role of that police department, the role of the police is organization of coercion and force to maintain the status quo, to maintain the oppression of black people and oppressed people throughout this country. That's their role. So it doesn't matter if you saw this one do that or that one do that. What you need to be seeing this one do is resign. That's what their role is. Do you understand what I'm saying? They will confuse you and have you believe that something wrong with you. See, you are racist in reverse because you don't like the police and etc. Because this guy, you know, is a good guy, but this guy is an instrument of oppression. What about all the good guys who go into places like Afghanistan to protect U.S. interests in keeping the gas lines and all this other stuff of the Afghan people? Do the people in Afghanistan, should they say, well, this guy might be a good guy, so here he is in my country shooting it up, working for this oppressive entity, but he's good, right? What about the people in Iraq? What about the people who in Cuba had to fight against an invasion by the United States government? What about the people in Vietnam? They didn't know that your cousin who went over there foolishly to fight them. They just know some invader was there, and that invader was an instrument of U.S. white power. That's what we're talking about. And that's what the police is. And that's the kind of thing that we need to even be able to educate our whole community so people are not confused by this relationship and cannot be misdirected. So we need to know what the state is. We need to know that it's got nothing to do with people loving each other, because the highest expression of love is to fight for freedom. The highest expression of love you can have to make sure that you and your family, your children, your neighbors, and people like you have a future is to get rid of this oppression that keeps us down. That's the expression of love. And so I think it was important to say that you have to have a revolutionary party. And it's not even a good example when you talk about something like Black Lives Matter, because it's not even an organization that even calls itself a revolutionary organization. It's a hashtag. And a lot of people in different places who, and a hashtag is capable of calling conferences with young people who want to do something about what the hell is happening, and they show up and listen to this garbage that's being handed to them. These are people who get paid big time bucks from billionaires and foundations for that purpose. So we end up fighting against them. And the other thing I want to say is this, that the revolutionaries, you make a distinction between revolution and reform. Revolution talks about overthrowing a system of slavery and oppression. Reformism is about reforming a system of slavery and repression. If you reform a system of slavery, you're still enslaved. It's just reformed slavery. The objective is to overturn that oppression, and that's what it is that we are about. And so it doesn't mean that we oppose to reform. We do a lot of stuff that has to do with reform. People have to learn through their own experiences that reform will not solve your problem. And so we try to bring people into political life. We try to get people to come into political action to solve problems that they want to solve. They think they can solve it through reform. We create movements and organizations to help them, but our objective is to take them beyond that so that they can understand what the real issue is that they're confronted with. And so the process of reform also takes us to a higher level of resistance and struggle. Uhuru.
Uhuru, again, I'd like to thank the chairman for giving that keynote presentation. Next, we're going to have our call for resources. So, Akila, you want to grab that? Oh, well, LaTanya, Akila's kind of crippled right now, so she can't grab the basket, but sorry. But yes, so now it is time for our call for resources, where we have a goal today to raise $100 that will be going to InPDUM. So LaTanya's going to pass around the basket. You can also give online at InPDUM.org. Is there any other slash or anything like that? Okay, and then just make sure you put in the comment section that it is for the Sunday rally. So you can donate online that way for anybody who is live streaming. And we will count that up and let you know at the end of the program how much we raised and if we made our goal or not. But I also just want to make a call for anyone who is not already a member of InPDUM to join InPDUM and get involved in this revolutionary organization, because it's just so important to get into InPDUM, because InPDUM is an organization that will meet anyone at their political door, no matter where you are politically, no matter if you don't know anything about politics or anything like that. InPDUM is that organization that pulls you in and begins to educate you politically about the circumstances that are going on around you. So if you are in this room today and would like to join InPDUM, you can see me or Akile at this table over here, and we have some sign-up sheets where you can sign up and get involved, and where we can talk to you and figure out what you like to do, and what your role can be in InPDUM and what you can do to help forward this revolution. And if you are online, you can also go to the same website that I just talked about to donate. You can go to InPDUM.org and hit join, and then it has the same kind of form that we have here. And yeah, we'll get in contact with you, and you can get involved in this work. Uhuru. So up next, after the basket is done being passed around, I'm going to call Akile up to the front to talk about the trip that the chairman talked about a little bit that we're going on in DC. On January the 14th, we're going to push the line for self-determination for African people in Washington, D.C. Right before Donald Trump is inaugurated into office. So I don't want to speak too much on it. I'll let Akile speak about it.
Uhuru. Uhuru. So like Comrade Lee said, my name is Akila Nai, and I am the chair for the Justice for the Three Drowned Black Girls campaign. And on January 14th, we are getting on a bus from St. Pete all the way to Washington, D.C. To rally. And there are flyers at the front and also at the InPDUM table. I'll give you a little more information. But I'm here to talk about why the Justice for the Three Drowned Black Girls campaign and myself, why we're going to be on this bus to Washington, D.C. On March 31st of this year, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department murdered by drowning 3 African teenage girls, Lanaya Miller, Dominique Battle, and Ashanti Butler. This murder, along with all murders of African people by the police, come as a result of the existence of a parasitic social system. A system established by the enslavement of African people, the genocide of the indigenous peoples, and the European colonization of the Americas, Africa, Asia, and various places around the world. A system where police become necessary to keep the white ruling class safe from poor and working class African and other oppressed peoples around the world from rising up and taking back their land and resources, because everything they have, everything that the ruling class has, is at the expense of us. And the elections are nothing but a peaceful contest between sectors of the ruling class for power. Not a contest to change the deplorable conditions of African people, not a contest to end the murders of African people by police and white nationalists, not a contest to overturn the system of parasitic capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism, but a contest to maintain this system, this bloody system of oppression, rape, murder, theft, and genocide. The system that killed Lanaya, Ashanti, and Dominique. So myself, along with the 3DBG committee, are traveling as part of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations from St. Pete to Washington, D.C., not to just protest the inauguration of Trump because I believe Hillary or any representative from the Democratic Party would make a better candidate, but because I am fighting for Black power. I am fighting to end this system, to deepen the crisis of imperialism, and for self-determination for African people. Self-determination looks like Black community control of schools, Black community control of food markets, healthcare, and Black community control of the police. And with Black community control of the police, we as African people will have the right to hire, fire, and discipline those with arms who come into our community. We will be able to defend our people against the U.S. occupying military force known as the police. We will be able to put on trial and indict the U.S. police who murder our mothers, fathers, children, and loved ones. I realize voting for Trump, Hillary, or whomever else representing a party of this system was and cannot speak to the interests of African people. My interests lie in ending this system once and for all and taking Black power over my own Black life. That's why I'm getting my behind on this bus, and you need to as well. Trump did not create this system, but he is a product of it. His words represent the conscience of the majority of European Americans. He is as American can get. But we should not be afraid of Trump and the more apparent threat that this system poses. We should be motivated to overturn imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism. We should be motivated to join an organization that has the way forward to do that, and we should be motivated to get on this bus for the January 14th rally in Washington, D.C. So, if anybody's interested, you all should be interested. The cost is $105 per person, and you can see myself or Leo to sign up for this trip. And I just want everybody to be extremely motivated. Get on this bus. We're going to be rallying. It's at Pershing Cart adjacent to Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. Again, it's a rally for self-determination because we understand that Black life matters, but Black lives will never matter until we have Black power. Uhuru.
Thank you, Akile, for doing that. So like she said, if anybody's interested in going to this trip, it is $105, and you can see myself or Akile. And if you just really want to go on the trip, but you feel like you may not have the funds or resources or anything like that, still come to us and let us know, because in these next few weeks, we will be doing fundraisers and things like that to raise money for people who may not be able to afford to go, but are still interested in going and showing up to DC with us. So please come to me and ask about the fundraisers and everything like that. I was told by Timba that we have a video actually that's I think a little over a minute about the trip, and yeah, so we're gonna show that. Do I need to move this?
My name is Mutulu Olubala. I'm also known as M1 of Dead Prez.
Call me Little Bobby Hutton, cause I'm first to push the button. Rappers don't be saying nothing to the system, we say.
Well, the Black is Back Coalition is organizing on January the 14th in Washington, D.C. A huge gathering march to confront outright white power is healthy for our people.
Imperialism, white power is the enemy. What? Imperialism, white power is the enemy. What?
It's a testimony to the time that we're in. And I'm here to build with this coalition that has beautifully articulated the aims of people who need self-determination and freedom more than ever in 19 points that speak exactly to where we need to be. This, to me, is government.
Imperialism, white power is the enemy.
That's where I'm going to be on January 14th, and I think that's where you should be too.
You don't blame the person, the victim, you blame the oppressor. Imperialism, white power is the enemy. Was the enemy when it first came to Africa, snatched up the first African, brought us here against our will, is the enemy today. That's the thing that we have to understand.
So again, that was M1 of Dead Prez, and I believe he's going to be speaking at the BIB. Yeah, okay, so he's going to be one of the speakers at the BIB, so if you've heard of Dead Prez or anything like that, you're familiar with who he is, and he is going to be a person who is there. So again, if you are interested in going, let me or Akile know. Before we go on to the next thing, did anyone have any questions or concerns or any comments about anything that was talked about in this rally, about the BIB or about the presentation that was given today? Akile?
Well, one, I just really want to appreciate this topic, and I wanted to talk a little more about, InPDUM and what that means, because I don't think that we discuss, the difference between organizations like InPDUM and, the African People's Socialist Party compared to you can't even call it an organization, but, movements like Black Lives Matter and anything similar to it. And first, InPDUM is the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, and its parent organization is the African People's Socialist Party, and it's the mass organization founded in 1991 to defend the democratic rights of African people. And it brings the masses into political life, a life that we have been forced out of by white power. And I think, Comrade Liu, you said it earlier, we explain the world, and, and everything we do is on the trajectory of revolution. And that's completely different from these other organizations who, again, that has been emphasized, doesn't have it on their agenda at all. This organization is a revolutionary organization, which is why we call people to join, because one, it politicizes and explains the world as we live in it today, not just the circumstances of African people, but it unites us with African people all around the world under the theory of African internationalism, because the revolution is not just something that can happen for African people in America, but it's something that has to happen all around the world to free oppressed peoples around the world. So, InPDUM is the organization, a mass organization that is on that revolutionary trajectory, that has an end goal, it has a to what end, it answers that question. And I just wanted to put that out there because I don't think that I've heard it enough. And there's literally no other organization like it. InPDUM is the best mass organization that you could ever be a part of, and that BLM and other organizations like it have really bamboozled African people, have blanketed themselves over any type of uprising or resistance of poor working class African people, which they did August 9th of 2014, where they splashed their hashtag over everything. That's the emergence of Black Lives Matter. It was, from the resistance of poor and working class African people going out there against the police, which is something that clearly Black Lives Matter doesn't do. They hug the police rather than what Africans were doing that day in Ferguson, where they were actually going up against the police. What they were doing here in 1996 against the police after they murdered Tyron Lewis, fighting the police, rebelling against the system, not handing out free hugs and trying to figure out, how we can repair this relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. So I wanted to make that clear distinction of InPDUM. And this is, why this is an organization that everybody should join and be a part of. Uhuru.
There's something that we've talked about and condemned, and you should condemn it, is a tendency to see situations where organizations and groups move in the fashion that the movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. And that's what you look at when you look at Black Lives Matter and whatever. The movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. So you put people in motion. But it takes us back to this old question, to what end? The movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. And that's a form of opportunism, that people are just struggling to be struggling. And we distinguish ourselves from that. And InPDUM, the thing about InPDUM is, I mentioned earlier that we do reform work, and InPDUM does reform work, but InPDUM is not a reformist organization. And which is different from what people characterize as Black Lives Matter, because it's a reformist organization. It's not about overturning the system. The movement itself is what it's about. It's about movement. So you have careerists, people who have careers being in demonstrations, people who have careers engage in actions. That's what they do. The movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. And InPDUM, and I don't even see actually Black Lives Matter fighting for reform on some kind of consistent, organized way any place that I'm familiar with it. I don't know of a campaign that they're engaged in now that would even lead to reform. It's just movement for movement's sake, and you have these careerists. Their career is being in demonstrations. Their career is standing up talking to the media. And the other thing is, they don't have to say hug the police to be on the wrong side. They could be militants. They do get engaged in sometimes disrupting highways and talking a whole bunch of stuff. But again, it takes us to the question of, to what end? What is the end? What is it that they're trying to do? And this is the thing, it's about the movement itself. It's not about actually overturning the system. And InPDUM, that engages, like in campaigns, and engages in reform work from time to time. The thing that about InPDUM is that it's an instrument of the revolution. It's an instrument of the party. It's directly connected and under the leadership of the party, which is a revolutionary organization. So you can have people who are in InPDUM who may not be revolutionaries. They just may be people who want to get something done about what happened to their child in school, or the police killed somebody over here, or I can't get decent food from this merchant in my community that continues to rip us off. But the fact is that they participate inside InPDUM, which is on the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party that has our own agenda to advance the revolution. And part of what you got to do is, to advance the revolution, you got to pull the people into the process. People can't just be spectators and bystanders. They have to become active participants in this revolutionary process. And InPDUM gives us an opportunity and an ability to do that. So I just wanted to mention that. Because there might not be somebody saying free hugs. They might be talking a whole bunch of stuff. They might be disrupting traffic. We've seen Black Lives Matter. We've seen them try to do it when we went to a thing that happened in Tampa at the fairground, where they wanted to block all the entrances so that people couldn't enter, etc. That was a militant, but for what? What is it taking us to? What kind of strategy is it connected to other than blocking the interests at that moment. That's the thing that we're looking at. The movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. And for us, the revolution is what it's about. And we get involved in movement to do what? Advance the revolution. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Does anyone else have any questions or any statements or anything like that that they'd like to say? Going once, going twice. All right. Uhuru. Again, I'd like to thank Akile and Chairman for coming up and giving those comments about the presentation about the topic that we had going on. Does anybody in the room have any announcements? I know Black Power 96 does. Okay. Uhuru. So they soon, the Black Power 96 representative is going to come up and give an announcement. Huh? Oh, the station manager, excuse me, of Black Power 96.
Uhuru. First, I want to start off by saying that there have been many hurdles in front of us as we have been working towards getting this radio station up and running. But I also want to say that we have successfully cleared every hurdle that has been in front of us as well. And on tomorrow, the concrete has been poured, so tomorrow the tower is expected to be constructed. Yeah, it's exciting. Which means that we'll be able to hook up our transmitter and begin broadcasting on FM, which is, like I said, really exciting. I also see a lot of new faces in the room. And I want to say that this is the opportunity for you to get involved with the radio station. Again, this is the radio station of the community. So you can come and have a show on Black Power 96. You can come be a part of the team for Black Power 96. I want to say that every Monday at noon, we meet here in this building to have a programs meeting where we discuss the different shows that are going to air on Black Power 96, and you also give an opportunity for those who want to have a show to come in on our meetings and go through the process and get in the show. I also want to say that every Saturday from 2 to 6 p.m. we have work sessions where we take care of different production work. We go out in the community and organize to bring other people into the process of the radio station, and also just to spread the word about what's happening with Black Power 96. And that's every Saturday at 2 o'clock in the same building. So if anyone in the room is interested in being a part of Black Power 96, I ask that you come to the table in the back, sign up to be a volunteer. You can fill out a new show application, or you can just ask any questions how you can volunteer your time to help keep the station running. And for those watching online, I want you to go to blackpower96.org, and you can find out how you can get involved with the radio station. So you don't have to be in St. Petersburg in order to be a part of the Black Power 96 team. And lastly, I just want to say that Black Power 96 is made possible by the generous contributions of the community. And also want to say that if you support Black independent media, log on to blackpower96.org, donate, and help keep Black Power 96 running. Thank you.
Thank you, Desu, for that announcement. Do we have any other in-house announcements before we get ready to close it out? Oh, okay, so we are calling up Alienza Bandelli, who is the over the Burning Spear newspaper. Uhuru.
I just wanted to inform everyone that the December issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is now available. I thought, okay, all right, never mind. That's what I was waiting on. All right. So if you're interested in purchasing a Burning Spear, a single spear is $1. If you would like to become a distributor of the Burning Spear, we have distributor rates. You can see me in the back back there and we can discuss it further. For the viewers online, you can order your spears at burningspearmarketplace.com. You can also become a subscriber and get the spear delivered to your door every month. It's $25 to become a subscriber, and like I said, it'll come to your door every month. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you, Alianza. And Akile Anai is coming up to announce our plenary.
Uhuru. So speaking of putting revolution back on the agenda, that is the theme for this year's African People's Socialist Party plenary. It is going to be from January 7th to 9th, right here in Aquaba Hall. If you have not registered, go to apspplenary.org and register. The basic registration fee is $35 for all 3 days. And there's a couple of different options for meals and also APSP plenary merchandise. So go ahead and check out those packages for your tickets. Reserve your hotel rooms. We're having some amazing speakers. Chairman will obviously be presenting, as well as other leaders of the African People's Socialist Party, Deputy Chairwoman Ona Zenea Shatella, Luwezi Kintasa, the Director of International Affairs, all the way. He's located in London right now. The Director of Department of Agriprop, Temba, all these different forces that are going to be speaking at this amazing plenary, amazing workshops to put revolution back on the agenda. So go ahead, register again, apsplenary.org. You don't want to miss this historic convention, plenary. Uhuru.
Thank you, Akile. And do we have another announcement from Solidarity? Uhuru, do we have any more in-house announcements before I close this out? Oh, Akile's back for another announcement.
Okay, and we have a kickoff event, January 1st, New Year's, for the Justice for the 3 Drowned Black Girls campaign. Uhuru, we are going to be having a demonstration and rally all together. January 1st, we'll be starting here from 2 p.m. We'll be marching in the African community and meeting here for a powerful Sunday rally to kick off the Justice for the 3 Drowned Black Girls campaign, to get justice for these 3 girls, and to demand the immediate resignation of Sheriff Bob Gualtieri, the criminal charges be brought against Howard Skaggs and all the deputies involved in their murder, reparations to the girls' families, and Black community control of the police. This is an event you don't want to miss. Again, it is the kickoff event for the 3DBG campaign, New Year's Day, January 1st at 2 p.m. Uhuru.
And also, if you haven't signed that petition for the 3 Drowned Black Girls, we have that petition right there on that table, at our InPDUM table, and we also have booklets for sale telling the whole story about the case of the 3 Drowned Black Girls and exactly what took place that night and the whole layout of the campaign for only $3, right there at the table. Uhuru. If there aren't any other in-house announcements, once, twice. All right, yes, another announcement. Oh, you had your hand up. All right. Lost my train of thought. Okay, Uhuru. So we I wanted to announce that we met our goal. Passing around the basket, we raised over our goal. We raised $109 tonight. So round of applause. So yay! I'd like to just thank everyone for donating, and I don't think we checked our donations online, so it could possibly be more than $109, but I know just in-house, we raised $109 tonight. So just thank you, everyone. And if you haven't already, come to this table to join InPDUM and don't just give to InPDUM, actually be a part of this organization. And if that is it, I'd just like to thank all the new people I see out here. I see some new faces in the crowd and some faces I haven't seen in a while. I see Wap and his beautiful wife. I'd like to thank y'all for coming. And I see some new faces in the front, so I just want to thank y'all for, coming out and listening to today's rally. So if that's all, we have a vegan-friendly karamu, which is Swahili for feast, right in the back, and we'll close it out today. Uhuru.
This show, y'all, this stuff contradicts in the beginning.